everybody. Have you had a good day? Have you managed to put your water outside yet? Have you seen what's happened to it? I can't wait for you to tell me in your videos or even to show me. Okay, so here we go. For those of you who've managed to do our activity today, I wanted to know the two animals that don't belong in each of these groups. So this group was the animals that live in hot countries. I wanted to know the two animals that don't like it to feel too hot. Which are the two animals here that prefer to live in a cold country? Let's see. Did you know the names of these animals? Should we go through them? We've got a polar bear and a lion, a rhino or a rhinoceros. We've got a giraffe and an elephant. Did you know what these were? These are hyenas. Hyenas make a noise which makes it sound like they're laughing. And this one here is a wolf. Okay, so let's see. Does a lion like to live in a hot country? Yes, it does. Lions like it where it's hot. You often find lions in different countries in Africa. Okay, that's where they like to live because Africa's made up of lots of different countries, but that's where you would find lions. Now then, during the day, to keep cool, lions tend to lie in the shade and have a little sleep. That helps them to keep cool if it gets a bit too hot. What about polar bears? Do they like to live in hot countries? No, polar bears like to live in the Arctic, in the North Pole. That's where polar bears live. And their white fur helps them to camouflage in the snow. Do you know what that means? Camouflage. It means when animals' skin or the colour of their fur helps them to disguise themselves against the colours that they live in. So because polar bears live in white snow, they have white fur and it helps them to hide, especially if they're hunting for some food. Okay, so polar bears, they don't like to live in hot countries. They like to live in cold places. And the reason for that is because they have really thick fur, and under their fur they have a really thick layer of fat which helps to keep them warm. If they lived in a hot country, oh my goodness, they would be far too hot. So that was one of our countries which was the odd one out. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to get my pen up here. I should have had this ready. I'm going to get the pen and I'm going to cross out the polar bear. We don't want him. Okay, rhinos, giraffes and elephants, they all like to live in hot places. And again, you would often find these animals in parts of Africa. You find elephants in Asia too. Okay, and down at the bottom here we've got the hyenas. They like to live in hot places, and again you'd find the hyenas in places like Africa where it's nice and warm. And then we've got the wolf. Now then, does the wolf belong in a hot country, do you think? No, he doesn't. Wolves have a very thick layer of fur, and that would make it far too hot for them in a hot country. So they prefer to live in cooler places, and their thick fur keeps them warm. So let's cross out the wolf, and all the rest belong in a hot country. Right, let's move on to the cold countries. Okay, so let's go on to the next page. So we'll make it a bit bigger for you to see. There we go. Right, so let's go through the animals on this page. Did anybody know what this one is? This animal is called an Arctic fox. I guess the clue there is in the name, Arctic fox, which means it lives in the Arctic, which, as we learned before, is a cold place. What do you notice about the fur of the Arctic fox? It's white, which, just like the polar bear, means that it can camouflage against the snow. Now, an Arctic fox doesn't always have white fur. Its fur turns white when it gets cold in the winter and the snow comes to help it camouflage. But in the North Pole, there's not always snow there. In the summertime in the North Pole, some of that snow starts to melt. So when the snow starts to melt, the Arctic fox's fur goes darker to help it camouflage against the darker ground. Isn't that clever? Very clever indeed. But because it has so much fur, it helps it to keep it warm, and therefore it belongs in a cold country. Now, do you know what this one is? It's a seal. That looks like a baby seal, a seal pup. And seals have a very thick layer of fat under their skin called blubber, just like the polar bears have, and it keeps them lovely and warm. So they don't mind living in cold places either. In fact, they quite like it. So, yep, seals belong in a cold country. Now then, what's this one? It's a parrot. Now, a lot of birds like to be warm. And what birds tend to do is when it starts to get cold, they will fly to warmer places. It's called migrating. They will migrate to a warmer place. But parrots, you don't ever see parrots in Urmston, do you? That's because it's too cold for them. Parrots like it to be really warm. And you'll often find parrots in places like the rainforest or the jungle where they can be really warm. So I don't think parrots belong in a cold country. They certainly wouldn't be able to camouflage against the snow, would they? No way. Let's cross out the parrot. And then we've got the snow leopard. The snow leopard, I guess I've given it away there with its name, haven't I? If it's a snow leopard, it must live in the snow. And snow leopards have thick fur, and when the weather gets even colder in the winter, their fur becomes even thicker. It's like an extra winter coat, isn't it? So that keeps them lovely and warm. So they belong in cold countries. And then we've got the penguin. This one's an emperor penguin, and these are the penguins which live in the South Pole, the coldest place in the whole world. And to keep them warm, they also have a layer of fat under their feathers, which keeps them very, very cozy inside. And their feathers are very waxy, which also helps to keep them warm. And what penguins tend to do is they huddle together in groups, and they get really close, and that also keeps them warm when they're all packed together. And if they keep their flippers by their sides, that helps to keep them warm too. That's why when you see penguins move, they're waddling, because they're keeping their flippers close to them to keep themselves warm. Right, now then, we talked about this one before, didn't we? About the reindeer, because the reindeer, we know, they live in the North Pole, so that is a cold place, isn't it? So yes, they belong in a cold country. That only leaves one more animal down here. A snake. Now, a snake is called a cold-blooded creature. It's a cold-blooded creature, which means it has to rely on the sun to keep it warm. That's how it warms itself up. It lies out in the sun, and that helps it to keep warm. So, would it do any good in a cold country? No way. A snake would be far too cold because it needs the sun and the heat around it to warm its insides. So snakes and things like lizards, they need to live in hot places. So sorry, you don't belong here, Mr. Snake. We're going to cross you out. Right? Hopefully you found the correct animals which are in the wrong places. Did you get it right? I hope so. So that's all for today, boys and girls. I'm going to look at your photographs now, and I know Mrs. Saint is looking forward to looking at her classes too. And Mrs. McNutt, but she's been in school all day, but I'm sure that she can't wait for the end of the day when she can have a look at yours too. Right, have a lovely evening, and you'll see your teachers in the morning. Bye everybody.